For those who don't know the backstory behind this, Channing Frye made a video probably like 2-3 days ago in his response about the ongoing discussion about what's wrong with the NBA, and effectively he laid it on the feet of nostalgia and a little bit of NBA media.
Channing Frye fired up comparing the generation of today's players versus the previous. Take a listen.
Nostalgia is killing the NBA. 90s basketball, Michael Jordan and Kobe was not as clean as y'all think it was. Wemby, Steph, this, that. They compare them to? 40 years ago. The rules weren't even the same. Nobody celebrates these new people. So why the would anybody want to be face of this league? You're going to get on every network for not being somebody from 40 years ago.
Stephen A. Smith.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. Number one, respect to Channing Frye, a champion. By the way, teammates, just looking at some of his teammates here that he's had, brother knows basketball. I just respectfully disagree with him and what he was saying. And I think that he's falling into the trap that a lot of modern day players want him to fall into, which is to blame the media. Nah, we ain't going for that.
The irony of it is that literally either on this segment or another one, but I think this exact same day, Stephen A. Smith, when asked the question on who would you compare or who would you rather have or start a franchise with, Shea or Ant, and the conversation had nothing to do with Michael Jordan, he still found a way to incorrectly actually compare Shea to Michael Jordan. Some shit that had nothing to do with MJ, still found a way to do it. The irony behind it.
The level of physicality that once existed in the league no longer exists. As a result of that, looking at the absence, not to say that the NBA isn't physical, please don't get me wrong. It's not to say that it's not taxing on its body. But what pioneers in the game had to endure in order to elevate the game to its present state, what happens today pales in comparison to what those experiences. And so when you see cats missing games, because for years we were lamenting load management, when you see cats showing up to All-Star Week and not giving a damn because they're complaining about the inordinate amount of obligations surrounding All-Star Weekend, which are legit complaints, by the way, but still shouldn't stop you from performing. And you see these kind of complaints with the inordinate amount of dollars, the exorbitant dollars, generational wealth, as you would point out, Shannon, that these players now receive compared to their predecessors. What is there to celebrate to the degree that we once celebrated folks in the past? I'm not saying that you don't celebrate today's game. LeBron James hasn't cheated the game. Steph Curry hasn't cheated the game. Russell Westbrook's never cheated the game. There's plethora of stars that have never, ever cheated the game. But when you see the nonchalance with which far too many players have gotten away with in terms of load management, in terms of finding out that guys are not playing games once you get to the arena and stuff like that, it is taxing. Then you look at an Anthony Edwards, for example, and he says, why the hell would somebody want to be the face of the league? All right, it's your right not to want to be the face of the league, but why did we want? People keep forgetting why we wanted to see Anthony Edwards as the face of the league. We wanted to see him embrace that. The brother looks Jordan-esque. Been working on his jumper, by the way.
Just went right back into it. Like, he is like, I don't know if Stephen A. Smith is deciding to miss the point, but you are purposely missing the point. The point wasn't in and what's crazy is, I don't know why we keep doing this, but the nigga immediately pivoted to, I took away from this the comparison between two eras. No, the overall point is the reason why people have a hard time being compelled with this level of basketball, because every single time a shortcoming happens with today's athlete, it is immediately met with expectations that are unfair, because in contrast to what was going on prior, they're not the same. So yes, the physicality may be different now in contrast to then, but the level of sophistication defensively is substantially more now than it was back then. So the rules are not the same. So grading these players based off of the same metric does not make any sense. However, and especially the point he's making, even in real time, the way that you all graded certain players wasn't the same now, because the body of work isn't the same either. Because nostalgia has everyone confused and perplexed about what was happening in real time. In real time, people were not applauding Kobe Bryant. In real time, people were not always applauding Michael Jordan. In real time, there was a lot of questions of things that were happening in the early 2000s and all throughout the 90s. Because when Charles Barkley and his fat ass was missing games, and he wasn't playing defense, and he was throwing people out of windows and spitting on kids and kicking people, that was a problem. We all love Allen Iverson now, but in real time, all they did was call a lot of those players in the early 2000s thugs. Bunch of tattoos on them, the way they represent the NBA. We look at it now in a much better light, but it's because of nostalgia. And all we're doing now is going in circles. It's a cycle. That's all that it is.
the media has to admit that they were wrong on this load management thing. He brought that up several times. I remember the faces of load management were LeBron,
Yep.
Kawhi,
Yep.
and Joel Embiid. LeBron had made X number of straight finals appearances. It was very much understood why he would miss a game or two because he had been to the playoff, making deep playoff runs 8, 7, 8, 9 straight years in a row. Kawhi Leonard now, we know, has a real degenerative knee problem. So it's not like he was missing games for no reason. And then third, Joel Embiid, they're about to try an experimental surgery to break a part of his hip so he can play again. So clearly these players needed to sit out the game.
And then Stephen A. Smith will be the first one to say, well, Embiid just needs to retire. Kawhi just needs to retire. That's exactly what you would say, Stephen A. Smith. So you can't on one hand question the legitimacy of sitting out games, but on the other, when the shit gets so bad that niggas gotta miss half a season or a massive stretch, you immediately pivot to the retirement talk. You can't have it both ways. You can't acknowledge or question why they sitting out, but then when shit goes wrong, they need to all of a sudden just retire. You can't have it both ways. Because if we're being honest with ourselves, outside of really Zion with his weight, I don't really know of any other player that you can genuinely question with the load management thing. But even if you want to sit here and say, even with that, even that is a much smaller talking point because it was the same problem that people had in the 2000s as well. Oh, all they do is play games. All they do is play games. Shaq wasn't playing games back then, and he got criticized for it, but Shaq was not playing games. Vince Carter was not playing games. Matter of fact, Vince Carter, it was questionable if he actually was quitting on the Raptors. People thought that he was quitting on the Raptors. So this idea that back then, oh, everybody plays hard. No. People thought that Hakeem was quitting on the Rockets. People thought that Grant Hill wasn't pushing himself hard enough, which is the reason why he went out there and played when he should not have played and completely ruined his entire career. So you know what? I'd rather have as many years as I got of Joel Embiid rather than nonsensical fucks sitting on a chair behind a camera trying to push this ridiculous pressure on players just for them to ruin their careers because I got robbed of Grant Hill because you morons decided to uphold some ridiculous standard.
We see the athleticism, right? But we also see a smile that can rival Magic Johnson. We also see an affable, a personality and somebody that just wants to hoop and enjoys competition and going at it, right? Obviously, he's got the personality to go with the game. And then he was on the record a couple of years ago saying, man, if you healthy, you ain't supposed to be sitting out. If you can play, play. So he was saying, look to me because I'm not looking to take nights off. That's when he made that statement a couple, you remember that, Tim?
Yeah.
So those kind of things are the things, respectfully, that I think Channing Frye left out as to why there may be skepticism. This feeling that the media has an obligation to celebrate the game. No, the media has the obligation to report on the game, to pontificate about the game, to speak on the game, not to celebrate it. We celebrate it by our participation and making sure that we shine a light on your product so people can gravitate to it. But how we talk about it is based on what we see you exhibit.
I'm not gonna lie, that is by far, and I'm not even trying to be hyperbolic here. Stephen A. Smith, you got to get the fuck off the airways. That's how you genuinely. To believe that it is not your responsibility in some capacity to celebrate the game, that is ridiculous. But even if you want to argue about reporting the game, it has already been debunked several different times that you in particular do not know how to accurately report the game. You don't. You have been so wrong about so many different things. I've made an entire channel debunking a lot of the stuff that the media members have not accurately reported. So maybe I would agree with you if we left it up to your responsibility to accurately report on things, but you all don't do that. You don't accurately report on things, and that's the problem. So maybe I would be okay with the idea of having that stance if you all gave accurate representation of what actually occurs. But when I hear Shaq sitting there question, what position does Sengun play? He's a small forward. That lets me know you all don't watch. When I'm sitting here having Charles Barkley go from, it's okay now to shoot threes if you're Curry and Clay, but in real time, he was sitting here saying you can't win by shooting threes. That means y'all don't watch. When I sit here and I watch y'all be 2 or 3 years late, now on Shea, y'all are 2 or 3 years late reporting on Jokic, y'all are 2 or 3 years late reporting on Giannis, and in the process of doing so, y'all did nothing but push a bunch of nonsense that was factually incorrect about these players. No.
Not to just come up with the peddle you with flowers and all of this other stuff, no matter what you do. That's not our job. And I think Channing Frye missed that respect.
But see, everything you said, you talked about the guys that came before Anthony Edwards, what they did. They didn't load Manning. Who did Jordan get compared to? Who did Magic? They didn't do no comparison. But all we do is every time somebody does something, Kobe would have done it better. Michael Jordan would have done it better. Oh, he wasn't better than this. It's called evolution. Nobody wants to see those 73, 72 ball games legs. You know that. There were games that were ending 65, 68. Who in the hell want to see 65, 68? Baseball. Until they started hitting it over the park, that's when the fans started like, oh, we love baseball. Nobody wants to see a 10-7 football game. Yes, they've changed the rules. It's called evolution. And sometimes you have to evolve to make the game better. It's just like the workforce. What do people want to do now, Stephen A? Work from home. Don't nobody. They did this during the pandemic and don't nobody want to take their ass back to work.
And here goes Stephen A running his mouth. Let this man finish talking. We let you run your mouth and, quite frankly, miss the point, because what Shannon is saying is the point, that y'all accepted Magic, y'all accepted Bird, y'all accepted Jordan for who they were. There weren't constant comparisons. Y'all just accepted them for what they brought to the table. That's the point. Regardless of how it worked out, regardless of what happened, you accepted them for who they were. And it's the reason why when y'all sit here and say, oh, look, you get all in a tizzy about Stockton and Malone, because if the standards are set and how we're going to talk about players, then yes, those niggas is losers. Patrick Ewing, he is a loser. David Robinson, until Tim Duncan got there, is a loser. Charles Barkley, habitual loser. Because that's how y'all talk about them now.
And I ain't going back to work, man. I want to sit in my home.
But does that mean you agree with Channing? Does that mean you agree with Channing Frye?
Yes, I do, because we can't let it go. We can't let Jordan. We can't let Kobe. We cannot let supposedly, allegedly, what is considered the golden era of basketball. We have yet to move on. And NBA are the only ones. Think about all the rules that the NFL has implemented that took the physicality out of the game. They've made it more offensive friendly. And what does the ratings do every single year, Stephen A? Rise. They've tried to do some additions to. And now look, I'm with you, Stephen A. You and I have been lockstep and barrel when it comes to this All-Star game. The game itself, they've got to let Kobe go. They've got to let Jordan go. They've got to let Magic and Bird and let these young guys build this NBA in a different direction than what it was 30, 40 years ago.
When I'm out and about, I'm talking to whoever, man, the casual fan, to my close group of friends that are hoop heads that love it, people in the industry, whatever it may be. The criticisms are not about that when people start lamenting about the game. That's not what it is. They're talking about a couple other things. The first being just when you turn it on, you want to see who you want to see. And the load management thing to me is a much less significant part of that, how long it takes guys to come back from injuries. I think that is frustrating for fans. That is frustrating for people to have to talk about the game on a daily basis. That's when you start making the comparisons to that era. Those guys played every night. They were available. You kind of had a good idea, unless the dude was really, really hurt. I turned the TV on, I was going to see who I was supposed to see tonight. There are too many nights that that's not the case.
Y'all say this, but Jason Tatum plays his game. Y'all say this, but as a recording, Donovan Mitchell's played 54, Darius Garland's played 54, Mobley's played 51, and Jared Allen's played 57. I think they played 57 in total. So they've only missed 3 games. When it comes to
plays.
Shea plays. Jokic plays. Tatum has played 54 games so far this season out of 57. He's only missed 3 games. Literally, Tyrese Halliburton was forcing himself on the floor last year to play games. LeBron I think has only missed like 2 or 3 games so far this season. I don't get what you love Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards has played 57 out of the 59 games they played so far, and I don't think, 57 out of 59 games they played so far. If that's the angle, but what's happening is, and this is where I do think that the NBA is at fault. The NBA has to move off of promoting Kawhi and Embiid in them, because it's like they are not going to play games. But if you saw more of Shea, you probably wouldn't feel that way. Or you saw more OKC, you probably wouldn't feel that way because Shea just plays the game, right? Like if they focus more on Cleveland, probably wouldn't feel that way because Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, like they play the game. But if on national television there's more Clippers and Sixers and Pelicans where they're trying to push players that are actively missing games, that's why you probably feel that way.
The number one criticism I hear, more so than, oh, they're not as good as Kobe used to be or Jordan used to be or this. It's not that. It's we don't see them as often as we do. And then the other complaint, we talk a lot about three-point shooting now. People feel sometimes when they watch an NBA game, is it a little monotonous at times when there's 80 to 100 three-point shots taken.
Because you got a bunch of cats shooting threes that got no business shooting threes.
That's such a fucking stupid point. This is the reason why I don't want to hear this dumb shit. Nigga, three-point shooting has gone up and they have sustained accuracy to 35 to 36%. What they don't want to tell you is what actually is a consistent complaint that people have is the fact that we have to sit here and pay so many damn subscriptions to watch the games. Of course, nobody on ESPN is going to say it because that's how they get paid. That is a true, consistent theme over the past 2 to 3 years. But the monotony of like, oh, we see the same thing. It was the same thing going on in the 90s, bro. It was a bunch of post-play that got so redundant that people got tired of watching that shit. So they changed a bunch of rules going into the 2000s because it was unwatchable basketball. Had NBA Finals games concluding where one of the teams scoring 54 points. You had the Knicks and Heat games going up to 68, 72 points. Nobody didn't want to watch that shit.
Couple of things for what you're saying. I get where you're coming from, especially with you, Shannon. I want to say this to both of y'all, and put us up all on the screen, please, because I want to see them when I'm talking to them. Every comparison ain't bad. The process of evolution can easily be interpreted as something that celebrates the game, not that denigrates the game. When we talk about LeBron, what the hell is there to denigrate about as a player? 4-time champion, 4-time league MVP, been to 10 NBA finals. What you're doing is compare. He's not my GOAT, he's your GOAT, Shannon. My GOAT is MJ. What are we talking about? Greatest of all time. How is that negative? You know how it's negative? Cats got sensitive. Got a cadre of individual, a squad of dudes that's texting and calling and complaining.
And what he's saying is fair, but I think, again, he's missing the point because Channing actually said this, is that you're comparing complete bodies or works of people who have not yet finished. So what was disrespectful is that when LeBron was going through his journey, every step along the way, instead of just accepting who he was, again, you all denigrated. Not necessarily Stephen A. Smith, but I mean, Stephen A. Smith quite literally, Stephen A. Smith cannot say this when he quite literally sat in front of a man who made a whole career denigrating and belittling everything LeBron did every step along the way to what he now claims second greatest player of all time. You cannot sit here and say that when you quite literally sat across a man who can't say it. Good try, though, but you can't.
Oh my God, stop the presses. The league started in 1950, 1947. It's over 75 years. Tens of thousands of players have played in the NBA, and I have him number 2 all time. And I looked his boys in the face. That's an insult. They went like this. It is an insult. What? This is the mentality, and they feed it, and other people feed it. Isaiah didn't have to be compared. Isaiah shouldn't have been on the original Dream Team in Barcelona. MJ wasn't compared to Dr. J before he proved to be MJ. Larry Bird wasn't compared to the Jerry West of the world and others. Vince Carter.
What? I don't know when Larry Bird was compared to Jerry West. If you want to say Jordan was compared to Dr. J, I guess, but I don't remember Larry Bird being compared to Jerry West. He was comparing Larry Bird to Jerry West just because they were two white basketball players. But there is no comparison. And if that's what y'all was doing, it furthers the point.
Compared to MJ before he was compared to Kobe. T-Mac wasn't compared to anybody. What are we talking about here? It's basketball. I used to get on LeBron for this. You know what I used to get on LeBron about, Shannon? I would go like this. LeBron drops 50. Everybody celebrated. The brother have a bad game. I'm just trying to be a good role model for the kids, and I'm just trying to be there. And I would go off like, wait a minute. Whoa. Can we? No, this is back years ago. This years ago. I was like, can we sit up there and just talk about basketball without us taking it to a place where it's abhorrent? We're comparing the greatest. I got Steve Kerr as a top 5 coach of all time. Somebody might say, where's Larry Brown? Where's Pat Riley? Stuff like that. And that is celebrating the game. You're talking about history. You're relating it to the present day. You're saying all of y'all are great, but who's the greatest?
He's missing the point because the conversation doesn't always have to center around who is the greatest. You just accept them as they are.
It's not about being out of the game. You know what it's also about? Kawhi Leonard, perfect example. Kawhi Leonard goes into a playoff game and drops like 38 against Phoenix, I think. Look great. Walked off the court, looked fine. They got to play they got to play a game a couple of days later, and folks found out that he wasn't playing at 5 o'clock. You're like, what are you talking about? The song. He looked great. What happened?
I ain't gonna lie. This is where he's losing it. He is losing it. The audacity of you to bring up Kawhi in this conversation is crazy because we actually know that he actually is hurt. So the fact that the reason why you didn't know at the last minute is because he was probably trying as hard as he could to go on the floor. But just because someone walks off the floor, that doesn't mean that they're 100% healthy to play the next game. You don't know. But we've already determined that it's irrefutably true that Kawhi Leonard is dealing with very severe problems.
That's the kind of stuff that they're talking about here. The paying customer doesn't know what it's paying for half the time, which is what hurts the game. People forget that, but I'm going to remind you.
When LeBron James would have a game, he scored 50 and they lose, you would doubt it. He lost. Jordan greatest game, he scored 63 in the Garden. Legs, tell the people at home that weren't old enough to remember, when he dropped that 63 in double overtime, what did the Bulls do?
They lost.
They lost. Tell me another game in which a player has lost that he got put on Mount Olympus. No, Stephen, they don't do that. Because Me and you got that same age.
MVP in the finals. And Jerry West lost in the finals and was an MVP.
Whoa, Stephen A.
Oh man, and people do not leave that era of basketball saying that he is of the greats, because they still say it's Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain. But again, it furthers the point that even back then, they assess players just based off of their ability to play basketball, not necessarily off of wins and losses, solely based off of their ability to play the game.
There's other areas that I think it's not always that every single next generation is better in every way. Because there's other things I can say about the 90s and certain things about the game that I think were better. That's fine. I played in that era. I'm not sitting here every day, though, as this guy that's constantly saying that's not as good as when I played. I don't do that. I think the one thing that I understand when people complain about the fact that they feel like, to your point, they don't know what they're about to watch. Because they look at two teams on paper, the matchup, you're excited, schedule came out, I can't wait, buy my ticket, block off that night to watch at home, whatever it may be, and you don't feel as certain as you used to when you turn on what you're about to watch.
Stop right there. Put Shannon back up on the screen, because I know we got to go to commercial break. Not only that, piggybacking right off of that, you brought up social media, Shannon, right? They got social media pages. They got social media handles. They got their own podcast. They got their own voice. And they got more money than 1% of the population, than 99% of the population. And so the combination of all of those things gives the imagery you giving people your you-know-what to kiss. And when you combine that with the elements that we've been talking about, that contributes to the erosion, because the other sport can't get away with that, but they can, and that's a problem.
Here are, again, a bunch of quotes from fans back in the 2000s. NBA's snoozer right now. Free agency coupled with multiple all-star, multiple salary cap maneuvering trades, killing the NBA. How can a fan know all of their team's players' names and career statistics when half of the players change every year? The three-point shot has seriously hurt the NBA. This is the only real difference between the 90s, the basketball in the golden era, the 80s. 80s players had the three-point shot, but didn't grow up with the three-point shot. Thus, they developed a mid-range game. Modern players all grew up fascinated with the long-range trade, and it is hurting the middle game. This is what they used to say back in the day, bro. The NBA is a collection of prima donna thugs who have diseased a once elite professional sport. Yeah, this is all before.
That was before Malice at the Palace.
Yeah, this is before Malice in the Palace. Yeah. These guys belong in the circus, not on the hardwood floor, with tattoos, funky hair. The reason that I will never pay $75 to see a game is the attitude of today's players. So this is the reason why, chat, I don't give a fuck about people who, A, claim to be fans, and B, people who again, are nostalgia baiting people into believing that players back then and the product back then was so superior. People have been complaining for the sake of complaining for decades now, and all the things that they complain about really and truly don't resort into higher ratings. Outside of the fact that it just needs to be a face of the league, a face of the league that is charismatic, really great at a sport, dominating, and has a compelling storyline. The reason why people tune in to that Mavericks game or the Lakers and Nuggets game, still shot a bunch of threes, still the flopping, Luka not playing defense, all that shit still happened, but it was a compelling storyline going into that matchup. People watch today's game where the Lakers against the because it was a compelling storyline. There's nothing wrong with the game itself. The ratings are bad on national televised games, and the merchandise isn't selling solely because of the teams that they are selecting to play on national televised games. I am sick of watching the Heat versus the Knicks every Sunday. It's become a joke to myself and my friends who are all NBA fans. The NBC games of the week usually stink. Let's see more of Kevin Garnett and the Wolves, Chris Webber and the Kings, Allen Iverson and the Sixers, and Vince Carter and the Raptors. And why not show teams that aren't as good on national televised games? It is crazy that even back then that was a problem. The fact that people had to beg to watch more of KG, C-Web, AI, and Vince because they wanted to continue to show you Allen Houston, fucking ridiculous.